welcome to The Practical Pastor. I'm your host, Eric Williams, and I'm here to share with you 5 things that clergy and others can do to improve their financial situation. I'm recording this on what in the old days used to be tax day, April 15th, 2020. In this age of coronavirus, of course, tax day has been pushed back to July 15th, and that's giving us all a chance to take some steps to improve our financial lives, to use this opportunity to think about what we can do to take some steps. And so I'm offering this especially for Episcopal clergy. I'm an Episcopal clergy person, and so that's the group I know the best and the situation I can speak to. But really, any clergy person or any person, a lot of this advice and information will be helpful to you, I hope, as well. A couple of things to say at the outset. One is, this is not intended to give you specific advice about your personal situation. I don't know you. I don't know what your situation is. I couldn't possibly give advice. And besides which, I have no credentials to give financial advice at all. I am merely, like many of you, a clergy person who's been trying to figure this out for myself. And I wanted to share with you some of the things that I've learned along the way in the hopes that it will stimulate your thinking about your financial situation. You know, many of us go into the ministry out of a great sense of a desire to be selfless and to help our fellow human beings. And very often we neglect our own personal health, and that can include our financial health as well. And so during this time, as I've been reflecting and giving thanks for all the blessings in my life, I wanted to share some thoughts with you that I hope will help you to gain a sense of abundance and to set free and unlock some of the generosity which I know is a part of your life. As I said, I have no particular credentials. You really shouldn't listen to me. I hope you will, just for this brief video, to gain some insight. But there are some people you can talk to and listen to. The Practical Pastor recommends finding a financial advisor who is a fiduciary. It's a technical term that refers to someone who must, by law, act in your best interest. A lot of times we get financial advice from friends or family or from people who are selling stuff. They're selling insurance, or they're selling annuities, or they're selling particular products as a stockbroker. And you want to make sure that you're getting advice from a fiduciary, someone who is working exclusively in your best interest. So I recommend that. In the Episcopal Church, we're also blessed to have the Church Pension Group, which oversees and administers our pension program and has for over 100 years, but also provides a lot of extra support as well. There are a wonderful team of experts there that can help you every year. Prior to tax day, they publish for us, Episcopal clergy, the Clergy Tax Guide, which gives invaluable advice about the latest information about the tax code and the steps that we need to take to fill out our taxes. This video has nothing to do with filling out your taxes, but I highly recommend that guide, and I highly recommend all of the resources and the people at the Church Pension Group, and you can access them anytime at cpg.org. So if you're looking for a real expert, that's the place to go. Step 1 in this guide is simply reviewing your quarterly estimated tax payments or your tax withholding. Interestingly, clergy are considered by the IRS both employees in regard to their salary and self-employed in regard to Social Security. And that means that clergy are responsible for paying quarterly estimated taxes. The IRS wants to get their taxes throughout the year, not just on tax day. And so they require that you check and pay quarterly taxes. So if you aren't having taxes withheld by your employer, it is incumbent upon you to do that. Quick story, when I was first married, my wife is also an ordained person. And when we got married in 1994, we were pretty naive when it came to finances and taxes. We did go to a tax preparer and he helped us fill out our taxes, but somehow we missed the memo that we were supposed to be paying quarterly estimated taxes throughout the year. So when the next April came along and we filed our taxes, we received a terrible shock. We owed, between the taxes throughout the year and penalties because we hadn't paid throughout the year, $5,000, which in those days was absolutely, I mean, it still is a big amount of money in our life, but back then it seemed absolutely insurmountable. And so I learned back then how important it is to know and to check whether those taxes are being withheld or whether you need to be paying them. And if so, being on top of that and setting some kind of reminder for yourself to pay those quarterly taxes. So if you're not doing your own quarterly estimated payments for taxes, it means that your taxes are being withheld. And so there's some key steps here that you want to check. Make sure the right amount is being withheld. That is handled through what's called a W-4 form, which you usually fill out when you're first employed in a new place. But the W-4 form has changed with the new tax law in the last couple of years. The IRS has redone the W-4 form, and so you want to take a look at that. There's different options for you now. It used to all be based on the number of exemptions that you had, often based on dependents, and now it's completely different. And so I've put here the website for the irs.gov, which gives you a sample W-4 form that you can look over and see, and it's something you might want to talk about with your employer about how much, or your tax preparer or advisor, how much you should be withholding. There's also an estimator if you want to get to a refined kind of amount of how much you can really count on for the next year. Again, the irs.gov, which is a wonderful website with tons of really helpful information. They have an estimator that you can plug in all your information, and it will essentially tell you how much you should be withholding. And so there won't be any surprises like I had back in 1994 on your tax return. Step 2 is saving in an IRA. Well, what is an IRA? An IRA stands for Individual Retirement Account, and it is one of the best ways that you have to save for retirement. For the first thing, you have control over an IRA. You open it, you choose the institution where you open it, you choose what to put in it. You have unlimited choices, almost unlimited choices as to what you can put in an IRA. And IRAs have tax advantages as well, depending on the type you choose. And we'll look at those two types in just a second. The key is that you must contribute earned income into an IRA. And if you have questions about what constitutes earned income, it's worth looking up the irs.gov website for more details. There are several types of IRAs. We're just going to talk about the two main types for the purposes of this video. A traditional IRA, individual retirement account, is one that is funded with pre-tax dollars. So it reduces your taxable income and you save money that can grow tax-free, and then you pay taxes on it when you take it out. And you can take it out without penalty once you reach the age of 59 and a half. There's another type of IRA that was introduced several years ago by Congress, and it was named for a congressman. It's called the Roth IRA, and it's the opposite. Instead of paying with pre-tax dollars, you pay with money that's already been taxed. And so that money also grows tax-free, but when you take it out, you don't pay tax on it. So it's another way of saving. It's generally recommended for people who are younger, who are in a lower tax bracket. The idea being when they're older and in a higher tax bracket, they will gain the benefit of that growth and not have to pay taxes later on. In the Roth also, you can withdraw the money without penalty once you reach 59 and a half. A couple other notes. With the Roth IRA, you're not allowed to take money out for any reason until it's been in a minimum of 5 years from the first deposit. And because it's already been taxed, you are allowed after that 5-year period to withdraw principal if you need it. It's not recommended, but if you had to take it out, you could without penalty. But you can't take out the growth until you reach 59 and a half. There's a neat thing with Roth IRAs too, in that because all IRAs are funded with earned income, kids can open Roth IRAs, or I should say, parents can open Roth IRAs for their children once they start having earned income. So if they have a paper route, any kind of income that has a paper trail that you can justify to the IRS that is earned income, you can use that money to set up a Roth IRA. It's called a custodial Roth IRA until they turn 18. And they can begin saving for retirement from the time they're very young and gain the wonderful benefit of compound interest over a greater length of time. It can be a huge benefit for them. Just something to think about. The contribution limits for IRAs are subject to change. In both 2019 and 2020, the contribution combined limit for your IRAs is $6,000. If you're 50 or over, you are allowed a catch-up amount of $1,000 in addition. And you have until the tax filing deadline each year to make contributions for the prior year. So if you didn't get it done by the end of December, you have normally until April, and this year, 2020, you have until July 15th to make contributions to your IRA for 2019. So this is a wonderful extra time when you can use that to make additional contributions and hopefully max out your IRAs. Step 3 in our guide is saving in your 403b. So what is a 403b? 403b is very similar to a 401k. Both of them get their numbers from the IRS tax code. 401k is the plan that's offered in for-profit businesses, and a 403b is offered in not-for-profits, so churches, hospitals, schools, etc. And first thing to know is that it's an employer-sponsored retirement savings plan. It's not something you can create for yourself. It has to be what your employer offers to you. And so in the Episcopal Church, for example, the Church Pension Group has created a 403b in conjunction with Fidelity Investments that is called the RSVP. So clergy and lay employees of the Episcopal Church are eligible to save in this RSVP 403b employer-sponsored retirement savings program. Another thing to know is that, like a traditional IRA, 403bs are funded from pre-tax contributions. So you don't see the money, comes out of your paycheck before you see it, and it is sent to Fidelity in your 403b. It does have to be restarted every time you change employers. Even if you're changing churches within the Episcopal Church, you'll still need to start that over, but it does carry over. It's portable, in other words. So the first benefit is that it reduces your taxable income for the year and is a great vehicle for savings. So you can't just choose whatever you want to put in a 403b. There are several options that are offered to you. The Church Pension Group, in conjunction with Fidelity, have chosen several options for you to invest in the 403b. And there's quite a range within that. There's, if you really don't like to take any risk and you want everything just to be set for you, there is something called the Stable Value Fund. It's basically an annuity, and it pays a small amount of interest, but there's no risk of loss. I think last time I checked, it was a little over 2% for the Stable Value Fund. Then there's a number of what are called target date funds. The industry has really been pushing people towards target date funds. It's another way to set it and forget it for people who are not comfortable making a lot of decisions or overseeing their own investments. A target date fund basically picks a target date that is the likely year that's closest to when you're going to likely retire. and usually in increments of 5 years. So you have to pick one that's around the time you might retire. And then the fund managers have chosen a mix of investments, stocks, bonds, and other things that they believe are the right asset mix for your age and for the date that you wish to retire. So if you're younger, it tends to be a more aggressive mix, more equities, more stocks, and fewer bonds. And that as you get closer to that target date, the fund becomes more conservative, so that by the time you retire, you have a better mix for that age. So that's the idea of a target date fund. The fees tend to be a little bit higher in those than some other options, but it really does have the benefit of just, set it and forget it. If you don't want to go that route, then the RSVP does offer a number of other investment choices, stocks, large company stocks, medium-sized company stocks, small company stocks, things that are called index funds. Index funds are funds that are very low cost. They have a very low fees because no manager is really having to pick those stocks or other assets within them. They track one of the indices, whether it's a stock index or a bond index or a mixed index. Basically, it just tracks whatever that index is. So one of the more popular ones is the S&P 500 index, the 500 largest companies in America. And so if you have an S&P 500 index fund, it's just going to track whatever those companies are. So you have a lot of choices, but not unlimited choices within your 403b. Like the IRA, money can be withdrawn without penalty from your 403b once you reach the age of 59 and a half. How they pick that age, I really don't know, but that's the magic number. After that, you can withdraw money from your 403b without penalty. And because the IRS wants to get their taxes, you must start withdrawing money once you turn 72. It used to be 70 and a half, and in the new tax law, it was up to 72. So if you've ever heard of required minimum distributions, that's what this is talking about. Once you reach 72, you must take your required minimum distribution every year or face a really steep penalty. I think it's a 50% penalty if you don't take your RMD in the year that you're supposed to. And so you need to calculate that or work with a financial advisor to calculate your RMD. And it's basically based on your life expectancy. They basically do the math from 72 until they think you're likely to die, and then you average that out, and that's how they figure out your RMD, in case you were wondering. Because of the clergy housing benefit, 403b withdrawals can be designated as housing, just like pension can be designated as housing. Obviously, you can't exceed the actual cost of your housing, whether that is your mortgage or utilities or other expenses. But up to that point, those can be designated as housing, which is another great benefit for clergy. Now, if you have to access money from your 403b before 59 and a half, it is possible in some circumstances to borrow from your 403b, but generally that's not recommended except in an emergency, and it would be worth talking to a financial advisor before taking that step. So what is a 529 plan? Another number in the IRS tax code. In this case, it's a tax-advantaged savings vehicle specifically designed for education savings. It's in fact considered to be the best way to save for your kids' or grandkids' education. It can also be used for yourself or for another immediate family member as well. In this case, you're the one who owns the account if you set it up, and you can name the child or grandchild as the beneficiary. Anyone can contribute to the account, and there are some limits to gifts that the IRS has. I can't remember what the number is now, something like $14,000 per person per year is the limit for typical gift giving. But in a 529 plan, you can give 5 years all at once in a lump sum if that is preferable. There's lots of information about this, lots of details. I found a good source at www.sec.gov. You could see the link on the slide here, and gives you lots of more information. But let's look at some of the tax advantages to you of a 529 plan. So first, let's look at the federal tax benefits in a 529 plan. First thing to note is that contributions are not deductible. So these are post-tax contributions. You've already paid tax on the money, then you're contributing it to a 529 plan. But earnings in a 529 plan do grow tax-free, at least federal tax-free, and will not be taxed if the money is taken out to pay for qualified education expenses. In other words, there are no federal capital gains taxes on the withdrawals, which is a big benefit. As of January 1st, 2018, in that tax law change, tax-free withdrawals may also include up to $10,000 in tuition expenses for private, public, or religious elementary and secondary schools, and that's $10,000 per year per beneficiary. That was a big change in the tax rules. And in 2019, another change was that some student loan payments and the costs of some apprenticeship programs were also added as qualified education expenses. And so they've added greater flexibility in how you can use 529 savings for education. There are also state tax benefits for many 529 plans. Over 30 states currently offer a full or partial tax deduction or credit for contributions to a 529 plan, and you can research which states those are, and if your state is part of that, through a website called savingforcollege.com. That will give you some information about the different state plans. You can generally claim benefits each year that you contribute to the 529 plan, and so it's a smart idea to keep making deposits until you've paid the last bill. And it's really worth researching all of your options. Again, I recommend that savingforcollege.com website. If your state doesn't offer benefits for residents, you can choose any other state's plan. I think years ago when we started a 529 plan, we lived in New York State, but Schwab had theirs through Kansas, so that's where we opened one because we didn't have a benefit at that time. So it's worth researching. And savingforcollege.com will give you rankings too, and other websites as well. It's worth doing some investigation. Some of the state plans are considered better than others, better run, lower fees, etc. And so it's really worth doing some research about which one you should use. Step 5, our last step, using and optimizing your health savings account, HSA, if you have one. This is really a bad news and good news story when it comes to HSAs. Now, let's start with the bad news. Bad news is that the rising cost of healthcare has put stress on individuals and families, employers, and the nation as a whole. I mean, you know that. It's just been a real saga. When I think back to what we were paying for health insurance when I started nearly 30 years ago in ministry and what it is today, it's just, it's been a huge increase. One of the sectors that's risen far faster than inflation. And so the industry, health insurance industry and economic forces are pushing people, and have been for quite a while, towards what are called high deductible insurance plans. And the bad news is that these shift more and more of the cost of healthcare onto consumers. That's the bad news. But there is some good news, at least for some people. Those with high deductible plans are eligible to open what are called health savings accounts, these HSAs, to help them save for their healthcare expenses. And HSAs are, in the practical pastor's view, currently the best tax advantage savings vehicles that are currently available. And we'll see why in just a second. First, let's clarify some terms. Which healthcare plans qualify as, quote, high deductible, unquote, plans? Well, it has to do with the deductible. The minimum deductibles have to be high enough for the IRS to consider these high deductible healthcare plans, or HDHP. So for an individual in 2020, the deductible, in other words, the amount that you have to pay out of pocket first before the insurance kicks in, is $1,400. For a family, $2,800. Those are high. Those are high numbers, and so they call it high deductible health plans. There's another term that comes into play here as well, and those are called out-of-pocket maximums. So there's often this, you kick in that first amount of money, and then the insurance pays often a percentage, not even 100% in some cases, of the costs. But there are maximums, and once you reach the maximum, then the insurance is supposed to cover the rest of it. So for an individual in 2020, the out-of-pocket maximum is $6,900, and for a family, $13,800. Those are the numbers which really determine if your plan is considered a high deductible plan. It's a little more complex because insurance also comes into play in terms of the negotiated cost of what you're paying for. So often when you go to the doctor, they'll submit your bill to the insurance company first before you pay it, and then you'll receive a bill in the mail that is the negotiated price that your insurer has worked out with them, and then you have to pay that deductible until your deductible is met, and then you have to pay the co-insurance, another term of the amount, the percentage that you're supposed to pay, and that varies with your plan as well, until you reach that out-of-pocket maximum for the year. Great system, huh? Like all of the other savings vehicles that we have talked about in this video, HSAs have contribution limits. The IRS limits the amount that you can save in your HSA, and it limits it also based on age. So if the policyholder is under 55, for some reason in this case it's 55 and not 50, but if they're under 55, in 2020, the individual can save up to $3,550, or a family $7,100 for your high deductible plan, your health savings account. If you're 55 and over, $1,000 is added onto that, a catch-up contribution. So it's $4,550 for an individual and $8,100 for family. These are the combined limits, whether or not the individual or the employer is contributing, or a combination of both. So in an HSA, your employer can kick in money to help fund your HSA, and then you are also entitled to contribute pre-tax money to your HSA. So now here are the benefits. The first major benefit is that you can save pre-tax dollars and reduce your taxable income for the year. Like a traditional IRA and like your 403b, it's pre-tax dollars, it's saving for the future, and it's also reducing your current year income. As I mentioned, both you and your employer can contribute to the HSA. And you have three choices with the money you put in your HSA. You can just spend the money on qualified health expenses during the year. This is probably the case for the vast majority of people who have HSAs. The money comes in and it goes out in that same year because those expenses come up and you need to find the money somewhere. If you are able to pay some of your health expenses with other income, you can save money in the HSA for future health expenses. In other words, you don't have to spend all that money in the given year. It's not like the flexible spending account. You can save it for future expenses. And for most of us, our health expenses are going to be much higher later in life unless we have a pre-existing condition. So you can save that money. The third option is that you can take that saved money and you can invest it to maximize your savings potential. And this is something that's really worth talking about because I don't think a lot of people know about this. Whenever you choose to take the money out, whether you take it out in this year, whether you save it and have to take it out next year, or whether you invest it and take it out 30 years from now. Whenever you choose to take the money out, if you spend it on qualified health expenses, it is never taxed. If you want more detailed information, I'll send you again to the irs.gov website. Look for Forms 969, and that will give you lots of information about the details of this. So I want to just repeat that in case you missed it, that if you play your cards right with an HSA, you never pay tax on that money because it comes out of your paycheck pre-tax. So it reduces your income. You don't pay tax on it up front. It grows tax-free if you invest it. And when you take it out, if you use it for qualified health expenses, it is not taxed at that point either. There is no other savings vehicle like that that is available to you. And so it's just worth thinking about that. So what would be a strategy for investing your HSA? And again, I want to say that this is not possible for everybody. It requires that either your health expenses are so low that they don't meet the savings that are going in, or that you have the ability to pay your health expenses from other resources that you have, other income out of pocket. But if you are able to invest, here's the strategy. You would pay your current year medical expenses out of your available cash flow. You would save your health-related receipts. So you paid for them, but keep the receipts because that will be important later. Then you invest some or all of your HSA contributions, and you allow that investment to grow over a period of years. It would operate much like an IRA. And then later on, you would reimburse yourself for the old receipts from the growth in your HSA. So you would, in fact, come out ahead. And the idea here is that you would then maximize your health-related savings for later in life when people typically need more resources for their health expenses. So if you're still with me, let's take a hypothetical example. Let's imagine a married priest who is 35 years old. They spend some of their HSA each year on current expenses, but they're able to save about $5,000 a year additionally. If they invest that $5,000 a year and get, let's say, a 6% average return over 30 years, when they retire, they would potentially have nearly $450,000 of tax-free money to spend on health care. They could use that money to reimburse themselves for 30 years of old receipts, which in my estimation would be roughly $150,000, and they would still have nearly $300,000 of growth to take care of health expenses in their retirement. Coincidentally, that is the average amount that a couple retiring this year can expect to spend in retirement on health care. So thanks for bearing with me through to the end of this video. Just wanted to quickly review the points that we made in this video. 5 things that you can do to improve your financial situation this tax day or any time really. 1 is to review your tax withholding and quarterly estimated tax payments. Always a good thing to do around tax time as you look towards the next year, and to make sure that you're withholding the right amount. Saving in an IRA. If you don't have an IRA, it's a great vehicle for saving for retirement. Using a Roth IRA in conjunction with a vehicle like a 403B is great for something called tax diversification, so that later in life you have the option to withdraw from either your taxable accounts, your tax deferred accounts, or your Roth accounts. It just gives you flexibility when you might need it the most. Saving in a 403B. We have a great gift in the church pension group of a wonderful 403B, and if you haven't started using that, I just strongly encourage you to do so. You really get a triple tax benefit from using the 403B. And if you have dependents or children or grandchildren, a 529 plan is often considered the very best option for saving for education expenses because of the freedom that it gives and the fact that anyone can contribute to the 529 once it's opened. And finally, I made a strong case that you can make lemonade from the lemons of high deductible health plans by optimizing your HSA. What are the takeaways that I hope you'll take from this video? Uh, Obviously, it's not possible to do everything all the time. We have limited, finite resources. We're trying to balance a lot of different burdens and expectations on us. But I strongly encourage you to take this time to find even one thing that you can start and do. Uh, there's a quote attributed, probably falsely, to Albert Einstein that compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. But boy, I wish I had known some of this when I was first starting out, especially if you are a younger person just beginning your financial journey. It often feels like you can't do anything when you're younger just because of the financial pressures that are on you. But every little bit that you do to save for the future can bear huge dividends later on. So I encourage you to do something. Pick one thing that you can do in the next few months as we look towards our extended tax deadline of July 15th. And I wish you every blessing in your journey. The point of this is not to make money, obviously, for its own sake. You know, as clergy people, as I mentioned earlier in the video, we go into this with a great deal of idealism and a great deal of desire to help our fellow human beings. And for me, this journey, like the whole journey of stewardship, is about learning to maximize the wonderful gifts that God has given us, to really celebrate the abundance that is possible. And through that abundance, then to grow more and more in our ability to be generous. So I hope this journey incites in you a desire to be more and to do more and to live more fully into the abundance of God's reign. God bless you all.